So good morning, everyone, and welcome back as we continue to make our way through the Amida. So if everybody has their blue annotated siddur, we will remember that last week we were in the bottom of page 49. And we were speaking about the fact that these are requests, that the requests are in two subcategories. Some of them are for personal, and now we're getting to be more of a communal request. So as we do communal requests, I thought it'd be appropriate for us today to actually start our class with the recitation of chapter 20 of Tehillim for two wonderful people that I know. One is actually the husband of somebody who's part of this class from the beginning. Moshe David ben Esther should have a complete refuah shalema. That's Linda's husband. And then Fradel Chaya Bat Necha, a good friend of mine's mother who in Florida was taken ill over the weekend. We wish them both a complete refuah shalema.
Amen.
So I'm going to quickly say Psalm 20. And here we go. Lam Natsech Mizma LeDavid Yan Chadana B'Yom Sari Sagevcha Shem Elahei Yaakov Yishlach Ezracha Mikodesh Mitzion Yisadeka Yiska Kol Min Chasecha V'Alascha Yidashna Sero Yiten Lechacha V'Avecha V'Chalatzascha Yemale Neranada B'Shuasecha V'Shem Elahina Nizgal Yemale Adonai Kol Mishalasecha Ata Yadati Ki Hashi Adonai Mashiach Yanei Mishmei Kachai B'Gvuras Yesha Yeminoi Eila Berecha ve'Eila Vasusim v'Anachnu v'Shem Adonai Eloheinu Naskir Hema Karav v'Nafalu v'Anachnu Kamnu v'Nisaydad Adonai Hashia HaMelech Yaneinu v'Yom Kareinu. We know that when we say Tehillim, when we do prayer, when we do learning, and we do tzedakah, it is the three-pronged approach, as we've spoken many times. So if anybody has the opportunity to give tzedakah at this juncture, or to pledge to give a little tzedakah for the complete refuah shalema of Moshe David ben Esther and Fadel Chaya Bas Necha, and any chola, any sick person within our midst, we should absolutely have a complete refuah shalema. And of course, somebody very dear to us as part of our community, Yitzchak Moshe ben Rachel Reza, I believe, in Abramowitz, that we should just hear complete refuah shalema for all those who are sick. Okay. So now let's continue our journey through the prayer book. We finished up, as we said, talking about tzaddikim, talking about righteous people, and their trust is rewarded. We're asking Hashem, that's our request. And now we're coming to the bottom of page 49. And the bottom of page 49, it is a request, and let's just read it. Return in mercy to Yerushalayim, your city, and dwell therein as you have promised. Speedily establish therein the throne of David, your servant, and rebuild it soon in our days as an everlasting edifice. Blessed are you, Hashem, who rebuilds Yerushalayim. So this is obviously talking about asking for the rebuilding of Jerusalem. And if you look at the words carefully, you're able to see that there's an actual progression in how we know Mashiach will come about. Because the first thing it says is, return in mercy to Yerushalayim. So returning to Jerusalem, the ingathering of exiles will be the first part of Mashiach. The second is establish speedily the throne of David. The establishing of the dynasty of King David is the second part. And then finally, it'll be and rebuild it, talking about the Beit HaMikdash. It's the building of the Beit HaMikdash, which will actually be built by Mashiach. So it's interesting to see how we know that, the final redemption will come about. And it is often why, I guess, we just don't go and build the Bet HaMikdash ourselves. We just don't go up on Har Bayis and build a Bet HaMikdash and then hope that Hashem will reveal his presence. Because this is Mashiach has to come at the time that Hashem wants it to happen, and we can do our part. And from time immemorial, from way back when, the Jewish people have always asked for Mashiach to come. Now, look carefully at this bracha. And then it says, V'li Yerushalayim, and to Jerusalem. Why is there a vav and? Because many people believe that the next bracha, which when we turn the page on page 50, Esemach David Avdecha, speedily cause the Zion of David, your servant, to flourish, was actually the first part of this bracha, and that they were amalgamated at one point. That this was the first part of the bracha talking about, King David and establishing the rule of King David, and that this bracha was actually split, and this part was put later. And that is perhaps one of the reasons, besides the other reasons that I've mentioned before, while this still maintains the status of 18 brachas, Shemona Esrei, the Amid is also called 18 blessings, when in fact it has 19, because this blessing was in the beginning put as one, and so it was 17. So why was it, taken apart? Why were they two separate brachot? The answer to that is, there's something that the rabbis who were codifying and putting together this bracha really wanted to stress. And that is that the hope that the descendants of David will be established. Basically, this was the time of the beginning of Christianity. And many people said, we don't have to yearn for a redeemer because a redeemer has already arrived. And there was a lot of confusion in those early days. Was there redemption? Was there not a redemption? Did somebody already come to redeem us? Did they not come to redeem us? So this portion, many rabbis feel, was taken out and put in as its own separate bracha, so we can truly know that indeed, no, the establishment of David, the beginning of Mashiach, a redeemer has not come, and it is something that we still very much need to ask Hashem for. So that is the next set of brachot, talking about the wanting of Mashiach. And then it says, Ki lishuascha kivinu kol hayom, because for your salvation, I ask for it kol hayom, every day. And the Rebbe explains on these words, kol hayom, that it is actually, kol means all. It's not every day, it's all day, every day. That really should be our consuming desire. And yes, in the times of our history, when things were challenging, perhaps that was their overall thinking, that I want Mashiach. But now, is that our consuming need? Is that our consuming want? But it should be, because when Mashiach comes, then everything else falls into place. So we're saying to Hashem, we want Lishuascha, we want your salvation. And how often do we ask for it? Kol hayom, all day, every day. And perhaps on the merit of us wanting Mashiach all day, every day, please God, it will actually come. And now we come to the very last blessing of request. And that is in the middle of page 50, Shema Kolenu, listen to our voice. So this is the summary blessing. It summarizes all the other requests that we've had. Remember, we've had some personal ones, we've had some communal ones, and now we're coming to the very final bracha of requests. So what is the summary? What does it say? Hear our voice, Lord Hashem, merciful Father. Have compassion upon us and accept our prayers in mercy and favor. For you are Hashem, who hears our prayers and supplications. Do not turn us away empty-handed from you, our King, for you hear the prayers of everyone. Blessed are you, Hashem, who hears prayers. Shomea tefillah, who hears our prayers. And this actually is obviously is a good summation, asking Hashem to hear our prayers, but a little bit more than that. There's a very, very fundamental concept that is in Judaism that is being expressed here in our Amidah. That fundamental concept is the affirmation that indeed Hashem does listen. Shomea tefillas. He does listen to all our tefillas, even though he is so transcendent and he is so big. Hashem does listen to us. And sometimes that is a little bit hard for us to think about and to acknowledge that Hashem hears every one of our tefillas and that he also responds to every single one of our tefillas. And certainly when we have a liturgy of all the things that we want and need in life, and then we look around and perhaps it hasn't been accomplished, perhaps our tefillos were not answered in the way we would like, do we walk away and say, well, then God just didn't hear, you know? Even if you ask somebody to do something for you, please set the table. And then the table isn't set. Do you say, well, were you not listening to me? Did you not hear what I asked? So our concept of Hashem listening is very different. In fact, it says in the Ne'ilah, which is the final ultimate prayer on Yom Kippur, listen to these beautiful words it says, who hears the sounds of the weeping and stores our tears in a flask and saves us from cruel decrees. And that imagery of Hashem storing our tears in a flask is very powerful. And actually one that when I was younger, there was this beautiful song called Daddy Dear. And I'm not going to sing it for you. I'm not going to take out my guitar, but I am going to just tell you some of these words because I thought it was so beautiful just in the beginning. And it's basically a child speaking to his father and saying, Daddy dear, tell me, please, is it true what they say, that in heaven there's a cup that gets fuller each day? And I heard that Hashem keeps it close nearby and he fills it with his tears every time that we cry. Zadie told me, Daddy dear, did he tell you the same? That when sorrow strikes our people, that Hashem feels our pain. Tell me, why does he cry far away in the sky? Tell me why, Daddy dear, is there tears in your eyes? And the song continues that the father answers the child that yes, indeed, that Hashem does store all of our tears. And then the ending of the song is the child saying, well, isn't his cup overflowing with these tears? Isn't it enough that now Hashem should answer our tefillas? So that is the imagery that we have on Yom Kippur, that Hashem is listening to us and that he's taking all of our tefillas. But what do we understand from here? That he listens to us and that no tefillah is lost. In physics, we know that energy can't be destroyed. It just changes its form. So in metaphysics, what are we saying? That in prayer, nothing is lost. Sometimes the answer is no to how we perceive it. And sometimes Hashem just answers us in an unexpected way, in a different way that we can imagine. Because we, and I know I've said this many times of the imagery of the tapestry, where we only see the back part of it, where all the knots and seems so challenging, but Hashem is seeing the front of the tapestry that we do not see from the beginning of time to the end of time. We own only this tiny little speck in this huge, universe and time and space. So, but to understand that even if we perceive it as Hashem is saying no, he's not necessarily saying no. He's saying, I'm hearing you. I will answer you. Maybe not in the way that you that you can appreciate or understand at this moment. But never think that Hashem doesn't hear our tefillos. And I think that that is such a beautiful concept and such a fundamental concept to come away with, especially when we're asking Hashem to hear our tefillos. Now, it also says at the end of the Shema, it said at the Shema Kalena, at the end of this particular bracha, it says, Ki ata shamea tefilas kol peh, that you listen to the prayers of every individual, of every mouth. And it is at this juncture that the rabbis have told us that now is the time for personal prayer for whatever you want. Prayer shouldn't be stagnant, and it also shouldn't be formulaic. That is why we're trying to infuse in every blessing. We're trying to infuse something that, okay, that could be meaningful for me. That could be meaningful for me. Because even though these were written thousands of years ago, there's something relevant to every day that we can extrapolate from the very Amida that we're saying. But at this point, it is our time and it's our obligation and it's our experience. We can and we should ask Hashem for anything that we want that we haven't necessarily thought of before or hasn't been incorporated in the other brachot. So if you are going to say the Amida at this time, at this particular prayer, stop a moment and say, Hashem, I really wanted that raise. Oh God, I really wanted, I don't know, my kids to come by and they didn't. Please, Hashem, I want this. Please, Hashem, whatever it is that you want in your life, now is the time to ask. And Hashem does hear. Okay. And that is all of our personal needs. And yes, we've run the gamut of personal to communal. And remember that we said that the highest form of connecting to Hashem is asking, because when we understand that everything comes from Hashem, that is such a magnificent level to be on. So now we're coming to the concluding brachot, the ending, the leave taking. They're saying goodbye. And this is also a form of thanksgiving. So if the first three brachot were a form of acknowledgement, the middle section is a form of request. Now we're saying we're taking our leave and we're saying thank you. So let's talk a little bit about these thank yous, the concluding brachot. And that we're going to actually start from Ritzei, which is the Ritzei, look with favor. And that is again in the middle of page 50. So let me just read it and then we can dissect it. Look with favor, Lord Hashem, on your people Israel, and pray heed to their prayer. Restore the service to your sanctuary, and accept with love and favor Yisrael's fire offerings and prayers. And may the service of your people Israel always find favor. And then we turn the page. May our eyes behold your return to Zion in mercy. Blessed are you, Hashem, who restores his divine presence to Zion. So that is the ending of page 50, and then we go over to page 51. And we will talk about the Ya'aleh V'Yover prayer, the prayer that is put in the darker, the shaded area. We will discuss that in a moment. So how is this a thanksgiving? It seems more like it should be as part of the requests, right? What are we asking for? We're asking Hashem to find favor in everything that we have done. So how do we amalgamate the two? Is this a form of requests? Please Hashem find favor, or is this a thanksgiving? So because we mentioned that the whole service that we have every day, our whole davening is really in lieu of the avoda, is in lieu of the temple sacrifices, of the temple service, however, whatever that service was on that day. Our thanksgiving, we acknowledge that it only comes after avoda. Now, remember I said that another word for prayer is avoda. It's work. It's working on ourselves. It's working on our connection. But avoda also means service. And at the end of the service in the Bet HaMikdash, the Kohen or the Kohen Gadol, whoever was, doing the service at that time, would get up and he would say, God, I hope that this service was accepted. And basically, it's also a little form of thank you, because he was saying, thank you, Hashem, for listening. Thank you, Hashem, for accepting this. So even though it's put in the form of a request, we hope that you've listened. We also say, no, Hashem, we know that you have listened, and thank you for listening to us. Thank you for accepting our service. So obviously, we don't have the Bet HaMikdash now. We don't have the temple service. So along with saying thank you for listening to our prayers, we're also saying, but you know what? What we really want is not the tefillah in lieu of the Bet HaMikdash. We want the Bet HaMikdash back. We want the service as it used to be. And that's why the two are amalgamated in this exact bracha. Now, there's some really interesting points that I thought that if we take apart the words, that's interesting to see. It says here, Hashem grant with favor all of your people Israel. It doesn't say grant with favor our prayers. It's saying grant with favor on all of your people Israel. Basically, what we are saying to Hashem is that, yes, I've had a lot of personal requests, but the most of what the Amida is talking about is communal. It is seeing ourselves as part of a whole, and look upon us as part of this whole. I want you to look at me individually, but don't, yes, I want you to answer me individually, but I want you to see me as part of this bigger nation of the Jewish people that you love and cherish so much. And that's why it doesn't use the name Yaakov, it uses the name Yisrael, where I've said that each of the acronym of Yisrael is also for our forefathers and our foremothers, that we are part of this whole, we are part of a Jewish people. And on that merit alone, Hashem should answer us. I heard over the weekend a beautiful analogy of how the Jewish people relate to one another. It was actually in conjunction with the calendar, but I think it really goes to us as we experience anything Jewish in our day-to-day lives. We experience a Jewish experience horizontally and vertically. What do I mean? Horizontally, we experience things together. So if you're experiencing Pesach in Toronto, you know that there's somebody in Bangladesh, and there's somebody in South Africa, and there's somebody in Europe, all over the world, who is eating matzah at the same time. When there is something to celebrate, we are all celebrating at exactly the same moment. And unfortunately, when there is a tragedy, like the many tragedies that have happened recently, of all the terrorist in Israel, of all the upheaval that's happening in Israel, or even what happened last year on Lag BaOmer, which is coming up this week, which is such a beautiful and celebratory day. And we had that devastating tragedy in Meron. And it wasn't just that was a tragedy that happened in Meron. That was a tragedy horizontally for all of us. We see ourselves as part of this big whole. And because we see ourselves as part of this big whole, we want Hashem to see us that way too. But it's not just horizontally, it's also vertically. Whatever we do, let's say it's Lag BaOmer, or it's Pesach, or it's Shabbat when we make Kiddush, we say, Zeicha L'Maaseh Bereshis. We're doing this because we want to remember all the way back to creation. When we celebrate Lag BaOmer, it's remembering all the way back to the time of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. We have this, and when we are saying our Amida, we are remembering all the way back to temple times. So when we're taking leave of Hashem, so to speak, we're finishing our Amida, and we're saying, Hashem, I know that I've come to you one-on-one. It's a very personal time. It's a very quiet and introspective time. But now I want you to look at me as part of Amcha Yisrael. I want you to look at me as part of this amazing nation of Israel who sees itself connected horizontally and vertically all the way back to Avos and Imahos, and please answer us accordingly. So now, there's some also interesting parts that we can take from this verse. It says here that you should return your avoda l'divrei beisecha, return your service to your sanctuary. And some rabbis have said, and then it says v'isha Yisrael, and the fire offerings of Israel. So if you look in your Siddur, you will see that there is a comma there. Some people say, some rabbi says, no, this should be one verse. And it's talking about the two different types of service that were in the Bet HaMikdash. There was the one that was outside, which was the incense offering, which was put on the Mizbeach HaZahav, the golden Mizbeach, which was the highest form of service. And I actually have my book here. This is my book on the Mishkan. So it's not a book on the Bet HaMikdash, but we know that the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the Bet HaMikdash basically replicated all of the things that were in the tabernacle. So if we see here, we see that the tabernacle had an inner sanctuary, which was the Kodesh Kodashim, which had the Aron. And then inside the inner sanctuary, there was the menorah, and there was the shulchan, where the showbread was, which has a lot to do with our challah that we bake. And then there was the golden altar. So that was the one that was inside. And that was the one that had only incense. But there was another altar, which was Mizbeach HaNachoshes, the copper altar. So this was the golden one, and I'll show you the copper one, which looked very, very similar. It looked like this, and it actually had a ramp coming down, and the Kohanim would walk up and do the sacrifices on there. And this is one where the animal sacrifices were, and because there was a big fire that was emitted on that. So the rabbis have said, what are we asking for? We're asking for both. We're asking that the prayers should be from the ones of so how does it say here? Pray to restore the service to your sanctuary, which means talking the ones that are inside, and then also the Isha Yisrael and the fire offerings of Israel, that Hashem should restore those two forms of worship. But look at our prayer book. It has a comma there because the rabbi said perhaps we're talking about something else. Yes, restore the sacrifices. That's certainly something that we are talking about. But then it says the Isha Yisrael and the fiery love and the Sfilasam and our prayers, Ba'ava Kabbalah, please accept this with love. So another way of looking at it is that it's not talking about the fire offerings, it's talking about our passion, the way we have come before Hashem, our way of transmitting all of this avoda, all of this service that we've just done. We've just spent so much time davening. Have we said it rote, or have we infused it with passion? If we've infused it with passion, Hashem, please accept this passionate plea. And it's also talking about sacrifice for all the people that have sacrificed their time and their money and their energy. Hashem, we want you to receive our tefillah, which was done passionately. We want you to receive it with love. Just as it was given with love, Hashem, please accept our service with love. And then it says, Hamachazir, it ends off with saying, Hamachazir Shechinaso L'Tzion, who returns. It doesn't say who will return. It's using the presence form who returns. Again, just reinstating our passionate plea that we want this type of service. We want the Beit HaMikdash to be built right now. It is at this point that in the temple times that the Kohanim would get up and they would bless the people. And so this is also when we have our holiday that, when we have, sorry, not our holiday, on a holiday, when the Amida is said, the Birchat Kohanim is said around this time. Another interesting thing to note, and I said we can go back perhaps, oh no, we can stick on the page here, on page 50. On Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed, you add the following, and on all the, so it says Rosh Chodesh and Chol HaMoed because on holidays, we have a whole separate Musaf that we say, we have a whole separate Amida that we say, and on Shabbat, we have a whole separate Amida, which we'll talk about, because on Shabbat, we take out all of our requests. And that is the main difference between the Amida on Shabbat and the Amida during the week. But the Yale V'Yava is said, and the reason why it's said is because what are we asking the Yale V'Yava? We're asking that all those special times, the special allotted times where an extra sacrifice was given. Remember, every avoda, every service in the temple was done specific to that day. So we meant, because we're mentioning all of these, services that we want them to be restored, it's an appropriate time to add here all the special extra services that was done either on Rosh Chodesh or on different holidays. So that's why the Yala V'Yava is put here. On Purim and Hanukkah, because they were not from the Torah deemed like holy days per se, they didn't necessarily have, a sacrifice specific for them. So Purim and Hanukkah are not mentioned in Yala V'Yavo, but when we get to the next bracha, which is the bracha of real Thanksgiving modim, when we thank Hashem, that is when we put in a special paragraph just for these two amazing holidays, where we thank Hashem specifically for those days. So that's a little bit of the construct. So next week, we're going to continue. So we've done quite a bit. We've finished off the requests, and now we're starting on our leave taking, and we've done the first one really, which is talking about this amazing avoda in the Bet HaMikdash, and how we thank Hashem for accepting our avoda, and now we also want this avoda to be returned. And then the next part would be the modim, which is the thank you, and there's a lot to unpack there. So I'm going to continue it next time. I want to just wish everyone well, and wish everybody a wonderful, wonderful week.